I will call this meeting of Assembly Ways and Means and Senate Finance to order. If we could please have the secretary call the roll.
Senator Brooks. Here. Senator Cannizzaro. Senator Dennis. Here. Senator Dondero Loop. Here. Senator Gokachia. Here. Senator Hammond. Here. Senator Kiekefer. Senator Ratty. Here. Senator Severs-Gansert. Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson. Here. Assemblyman Frierson. Here. Assemblywoman Gorlow.
Here.
Assemblyman Hafen. Here. Assemblywoman Howdegi.
Here.
Assemblyman Levitt. Here. Assemblywoman Miller.
Here.
Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno.
Here.
Assemblywoman Peters.
Here.
Assemblyman Roberts.
Here.
Assemblywoman Titus.
Here.
Assemblywoman Tolles. Assemblyman Watts.
Here.
Chair Carlton.
And I am here. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to sort of a Friday for this week. So with that, we have reports from subcommittees on budget closings. The first report we have up this morning is the Department of Health and Human Services. And with that, this is going to be a much happier closing than we thought it was going to be 2 months ago after some tears were shed. So with that, if we could go ahead and have the documents passed out. It's not one of the thickest ones, but there's a lot in there. I'm happy to give the committee members a couple of minutes to just take a quick look at it. Please don't leave the room, because once you do, I can't get you back. So in order for everyone to kind of be familiar with what we're about to discuss, we'll take just a moment, and then we'll come back. Assemblywoman Gorlow, let us know if you are able to access the documents or if you have any issues, okay?
Will do. Thank you.
Did you get them, Ms. Gorlow? You're set?
I did. Yes,
Good.
I did. Thank
Just
you.
wanted to make sure that everyone had the appropriate documents in front of them. So with that, I believe we have Ms. Crockett this morning. Is that correct?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, please proceed.
With the Fiscal Analysis Division, for the record, I will be walking the committee through the joint subcommittee on human services closing report for 2 Department of Health and Human Services Director's Office budgets and 6 budgets for the Division of Healthcare Financing and Policy. The Joint Subcommittee on Human Services has completed its review of the Department of Health and Human Services Director's Office and Division of Healthcare Financing and Policy and made the following recommendations for the 2021 through 23 biennium. The closing actions taken by the members of the subcommittee have resulted in an increase of general fund appropriations of $14.3 million in fiscal year 2022 and $45.3 million in fiscal year 2023 when compared to the governor's recommended budget. The following comments describe the more significant recommendations of the joint subcommittee. For the Intergovernmental Transfer Program budget 3157, The subcommittee recommended approval of the governor's recommendation to continue the managed care organization directed payment program to provide additional Medicaid reimbursements to public hospitals in Clark County for services provided to Medicaid participants, with adjustments to align for intergovernmental transfer funding anticipated to be available from Clark County in the 21 through 23 biennium to support the non-federal share. The program is anticipated to provide Medicaid reimbursements totaling $114.9 million over the biennium to the University Medical Center of Southern Nevada, and to generate a net benefit to the state of $14.4 million over the biennium, which reduces the need for general fund appropriations by the same amount in the Medicaid budget. Due to the delay in federal disproportionate share hospital allotment reductions approved in the Consolidated Appropriations Act 2021, the subcommittee recommended approval of increasing disproportionate share hospital payments by $131.9 million from $47.7 million to $179.6 million over the 21 through 23 biennium. The increase in disproportionate share hospital payments would increase the associated state net benefit by $23.8 million from $35.2 million to $58.9 million, reducing the need for general fund appropriations by the same amount in the Medicaid budget. In the administration budget, Budget 3158, to enhance the agency's clinical expertise, the subcommittee recommended approving the governor's recommendation as amended by Budget Amendment A2150-83158 for one new unclassified state dental officer position and a bill draft to locate the position within the Division of Healthcare Financing and Policy at a cost of $481,016, of which $130,833 would be general fund over the upcoming biennium, and to transfer in one unclassified senior position from the Northern Nevada Adult Mental Health Services budget to serve as a Medicaid pharmacy advisor at a cost of $440,613, of which $110,980 would be general fund over the upcoming biennium. The subcommittee also recommended approval of a new business process analyst position at a cost of $142,925, of which $14,293 would be general fund over the 21 through 23 biennium to support data quality initiatives. The subcommittee recommended approval of $8.1 million, including $1.6 million in general fund over the biennium to support costs associated with a contracted pharmacy benefit manager. In addition, the subcommittee recommended approval of language in the Appropriations and Authorizations Act, directing that funding approved for the Medicaid and checkup budgets be expended to continue the current service delivery model for prescription drugs, in which prescription drugs are generally not carved out of managed care in the 2021 through 23 biennium. The subcommittee recommended approval of 4 IT projects, including the continuation of implementing the electronic visit verification system, an initiative to improve participant access to healthcare information, to complete the Medicaid Management Information System Modernization Project, and Budget Amendment A2150-3158, to support updating the agency's health IT roadmap at a total cost of $3.5 million, including $775,540 in general fund over the upcoming biennium. The subcommittee did not recommend approving health information exchange projects, for which the non-federal share of costs was to be provided through a donation, as the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services did not authorize federal funding for the projects. Nevada Medicaid Title 19, Budget 3243. The subcommittee recommended approval of revised federal medical assistance FMAP rates, including a temporary 6.2 percentage point increase in the standard rate authorized through the Families First Coronavirus Response Act through December 31st, 2021, which assumes a public health emergency declaration will continue through calendar year 2021 or fiscal year 2022, and approval of FY 2023 FMAP rates based on the May 6, 2021 federal funds information for states projection. Recognizing uncertainty surrounding projected FMAP rates for the upcoming biennium, the subcommittee recommended approval of one-time language in the Authorizations Act, authorizing the agency to accept additional federal funds in fiscal year 2022 and 2023 in the Medicaid and checkup budgets without requiring an offsetting decrease in general funds. The subcommittee recommended approving revised Medicaid March 2021 caseload projections at a cost of $1.90 billion, including $320.5 million general fund over the 21 through 23 biennium, which is an increase of $683.8 million, including $23.5 million general fund when compared to the amounts recommended by the governor. The updated caseload projections estimate average monthly Medicaid caseload of 831,224 in fiscal year 2022 and 822,431 in fiscal year 2023. To rescind provider rate reductions approved in Assembly Bill 3 of the 31st special session, the subcommittee recommended approval of budget amendment A216813243 at a cost of $147 million, including $74.5 million in general fund in fiscal year 2022, and $26.7 million, including $7.3 million in general fund in fiscal year 2023, and language in the Appropriations Act to amend Assembly Bill 3 to remove applicable language directing the division to implement budget reduction measures. The recommendation would support the restoration of a 6% fee schedule provider rate reduction effective fiscal year 2021, which has the effect of reducing a projected fiscal year 2021 surplus recommended to be balanced forward from fiscal year 2021 to fiscal year 2022 as a budget reduction measure from $60 million to $19.9 million, and to support FY 2022 costs of this rate restoration through September 2021, and the restoration of a 2.5% acute care hospital rate reduction effective July 1st, 2021 throughout the upcoming biennium. The subcommittee also recommended approval of the governor's recommendation for funding totaling $481.2 million, including $126.8 million general fund to support restoring the 6% fee schedule provider rate reduction October 2021 through the remainder of the biennium. The subcommittee recommended approval of mandatory provider rate increases based on updated caseload FMAP rates and Moody's Analytics February 2021 inflation projections at a total cost of $366.3 million, including $106.6 million in general fund over the upcoming biennium. Rather than approving $12.6 million in additional general funds to support a higher inflation rate for fee-for-service prescription drugs as requested by the agency, considering that general funds appropriated to the division's budgets are limited to the amounts approved by the legislature, with specific exceptions included in the Appropriations Act, the subcommittee recommended approval of one-time language in the 2021 Appropriations Act, authorizing the agency to seek a supplemental appropriation if it experiences a general fund shortfall that is directly caused by prescription drug cost increases. The subcommittee recommended approval of the governor's recommendation to eliminate coverage for biofeedback and neurotherapy services for savings totaling $39.6 million, of which $12.8 million would be general fund, over the upcoming biennium. However, the subcommittee did not recommend approving eliminating basic skills training, behavioral health case management for non-seriously mentally ill and non-seriously emotionally disturbed individuals, and psychosocial rehabilitation services, and recommended restoring funding of $33.5 million, including $10.2 million in general fund over the biennium. The subcommittee recommended approval of the governor's recommendation to implement a number of budget reduction measures for the Medicaid program, generating savings totaling $172.7 million, including $33 million in general fund over the biennium. The governor's recommended cost-saving measures include utilizing a portion of a projected fiscal year 2021 surplus to make certain managed care organization payments in fiscal year 2021 rather than 2022, reducing capitated payments for non-emergency transportation services to align with the contract amount with no anticipated change in services, and to implement a cost containment strategy referred to as a two-sided risk corridor to recover funding from managed care organizations in fiscal year 2022 for lower than anticipated costs in calendar year 2020. The subcommittee did not recommend approving a budget reduction measure recommended by the governor to implement personal care services policy changes to limit services supporting instrumental activities of daily living, such as assistance with food preparation, laundry, and housekeeping for individuals with a living caregiver, and recommended restoring funding totaling $23.9 million, including $7 million in general fund over the 21 through 23 biennium. The subcommittee recommended approval of the governor's recommendations, including $55.2 million, of which $8.2 million would be general fund over the biennium, to increase waiver slots for the state's 3 approved Medicaid home and community-based waiver programs, including an increase of 527 slots for the waiver for individuals with intellectual disabilities and related conditions, an increase of 274 slots for the waiver for persons with physical disabilities, and an increase of 488 slots for the waiver for the frail elderly, in order to serve anticipated caseloads and reduce wait lists to under 90 days. Finally, the subcommittee recommended issuing a letter of intent directing the agency to report annually to the Interim Finance Committee on actual costs and savings associated with implementing a new specialized foster care services. The next budget is the Nevada Checkup Program Budget 3178. Consistent with the Medicaid budget, the subcommittee recommended approval of revised FMAP rates, including a temporary 4.34 percentage point increase in the Enhanced Children's Health Insurance Program rate through December 31st, 2021 for FY 2022, and approval of FY 2023 FMAP rates based on the May 6, 2021 federal funds information for states projection. Based on revised caseload projections, the subcommittee recommended approval of $5.2 million, of which $1.1 million would be general fund, over the biennium to support average monthly checkup caseloads of 28,422 in fiscal year 2022 and 29,079 in fiscal year 2023. The subcommittee recommended approval of mandatory provider rate increases recommended by the governor at a cost of $1.4 million, including $365,943 in general fund over the 21 through 23 biennium. Consistent with its recommendations for the Medicaid budget, the subcommittee recommended approval of eliminating biofeedback and neurotherapy services for savings of $318,938, of which $80,940 would be general fund over the upcoming biennium, and did not recommend approving eliminating basic skills training and psychosocial rehabilitation services, and recommended restoring funding of $660,399, of which $167,589 would be general fund over the 21 through 23 biennium. To rescind provider rate reductions approved in Assembly Bill 3 of the 31st special session, consistent with recommendations for the Medicaid budget, the subcommittee recommended approval of budget amendment A216833178 at a cost of $2.8 million, including $604,310 in general fund over the 21 through 23 biennium. The subcommittee also recommended approval of $12.6 million, including $3.2 million in general fund, to support restoring the 6% provider fee schedule rate reduction October 2021 through the remainder of the 21 through 23 biennium. Prescription drug rebate budget 3245. To improve transparency of prescription drug rebate revenue, the subcommittee recommended approval of the establishment of the prescription drug rebate budget through the revenue neutral transfer of $669.4 million in prescription drug rebate revenue from the Medicaid budget to this new standalone budget. Moving on to the director's office, the UPL holding account budget 3260. The subcommittee recommended approval of continuing the UPL holding account as recommended by the governor in the 2021 through 23 biennium, and of language in the 2021 Appropriations Act to authorize the continuation of the account in the upcoming biennium. Indigent Hospital Care Budget 3244. To provide relief to the counties for rising Medicaid costs, the subcommittee recommended approval of the governor's recommendation to continue and expand a shift of funding in this budget from providing the non-federal share of Medicaid supplemental payments to supporting a portion of counties' financial responsibility to pay the non-federal share of Medicaid expenditures for indigent individuals who meet an institutional level of care, as authorized by NRS 428206. The recommendation would provide funding totaling $35.2 million over the upcoming biennium to the counties for Medicaid costs, with corresponding reduction in funding for the non-federal share of the Indigent Accident Fund Supplemental Payment Program, which is anticipated to decrease supplemental payments to hospitals from $121 million to $70.7 million in fiscal year 2022, and from $114.2 million to $70.1 million in fiscal year 2023. The subcommittee recommended approval of all other closing items in the agency's budgets with technical adjustments as recommended by the governor. The subcommittee recommended closing the following Department of Health and Human Services budget as recommended by the governor with minor technical adjustments, and that would be the Division of Healthcare Financing and Policy, increased quality of nursing care budget. And that concludes the subcommittee's actions on those budgets, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. Crockett. And in our closing document behind there, you see multiple pages of all the technical adjustments that were made. So we know how much work was put into making sure that this was thoroughly buttoned up from the top button all the way down. So with that, questions and comments from the committee, Ms. Monroe Moreno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, when we entered this legislative session, we came in after having 2 special sessions where we made some heartbreaking cuts that directly affected the people that we represent. And my first few HHS subcommittee meetings were tearful subcommittee meetings. However, you don't want to get amendments so late into a session, but the amendments that we received in the last few weeks with changes to our budgets have allowed us to right some of those decisions that we made during the special session. And even now, when you look at what we're putting back, the special skills training, the behavioral health case management, the 6% provider fee scale that we're replacing. While we came into this session kind of in a depressing place, we're leaving knowing that we've made some changes now with this budget, if we close it as it is, knowing we're making a direct impact on the lives, positive impact on so many lives. And I thank my subcommittee members because I know it was taxing, but we're doing really good work here today. I just wanted to say that and get it on the record.
Thank you. Senator Ratty, did you have any comments? No? All good. And, you know, as I said in the subcommittee closing, being able to restore those Medicaid cuts that happened in AB3 and knowing the moment in time when we could do it, and then working with the GFO to make sure that the amendment got over here. We all were in agreement that was something we needed to do. No one wants to have conversations about who gets a prosthetic versus who gets basic skills. I mean, the conversations on that were heart-wrenching, but knowing that we can get back, we're getting back to square one. We still need to build a couple more rungs to the ladder to get out of the hole. We're not out of the hole yet, but at least we're getting close, especially to these vulnerable populations. So this is one of the good days in the legislature at this moment in time. So with that, not seeing anything else, I would accept a motion. Senator Brooks.
Thank you. I just want to thank both the chairs of the subcommittees and all the members of those subcommittees as well. This is probably the this is probably the most difficult subcommittee that anyone would serve on, so I just appreciate all their hard work. And with that, I will make a motion to accept and approve the Joint Committee on Human Services closing report for the Department of Health and Human Services Director's Office and Division of Healthcare Financing and Policy.
I would second the motion.
I had a motion from Senator Brooks, a second from Ms. Monroe Moreno. Any questions or comments on the motion? Not seeing any. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Hearing no opposition, passes. Oh, Miss Gorlow. Raise your hand if you're an aye. Ms. Gorlow signifies aye. Thank you very much, Ms. Gorlow. Almost forgot about you this time. So with that, the motion passes unanimously of all the members that are present. We next have, I believe, the Department of Corrections, and if staff nods their head yes, I'll believe it's true. And we'll pass that out. Everybody can take a quick look. Department of Corrections has always been a very interesting closing in the past, so let's see what happens. Okay, I think we can go ahead and begin. I think we have Mr. Speed, is that correct? Good morning.
Yes, Madam Chair. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Dustin Speed, LCB Fiscal Analysis Division. Today I'll be reviewing the subcommittee closing report for the Department of Corrections. The Joint Committee on Public Safety, Natural Resources, and Transportation has completed its review of the Department of Corrections budgets for the 2021-23 biennium. The closing recommendations of the subcommittee resulted in general fund appropriation reductions of $15.8 million in fiscal year 2022 and $15.9 million in fiscal year 2023. However, as discussed later in the closing, approximately $5.6 million of the identified reductions in fiscal year 2022 and $6.2 million of the identified reductions in fiscal year 2023 are recommended to be budgeted in the interim finance committee's contingency account to be available to the department under certain circumstances, and as such do not reflect savings at this time. The following comments describe the more significant recommendations of the subcommittee. The department's budget is primarily driven by the projected number of inmates to be housed. The executive budget provided funding to house an average of 12,345 inmates in fiscal year 2022 and 12,049 inmates in fiscal year 2023 based on inmate population projection from the JFA Institute, October 2020. The subcommittee recommended funding to house an average of 11,043 inmates in fiscal year 2022 and 11,019 inmates in fiscal year 2023 based on revised inmate population projections updated March 2021. Which is a reduction of 1,352 and 1,076 inmates in fiscal year 2022 and fiscal year 2023, respectively, as compared to the fiscal year 2020 actual inmate populations. Our first item will be to the department overview. The subcommittee recommended approval of adjustments to average annual inmate population caseloads as included in the executive budget, inclusive of 21 budget amendments submitted by the governor's finance office and technical adjustments to revise inmate-driven expenditures at each institution for prison medical, the offender store fund, and the inmate welfare account, which result in net reductions in general fund appropriations of $5.3 million in fiscal year 2022 and $4.4 million in fiscal year 2023. And other funds of $1.7 million in fiscal year 2022 and $1.4 million in fiscal year 2023. In response to inquiries from the subcommittee, the governor's finance office indicated that the reclassification of the Ely State Prison from a maximum security to a medium security facility and High Desert State Prison from a medium security facility to a maximum security facility is not being considered for the 2021-23 biennium, and requested the department consider an internal study to provide evidence that the reclassification of the institutions is the appropriate direction for the department should be going in for the 2023-2025 biennium. Through the agency's administrative regulations, staff can be temporarily reassigned to another duty location to meet workload needs of the agency to address the movement of inmates between facilities. These transfers are not intended to be used for adjusting the legislatively approved staffing levels of a particular institution. The subcommittee recommended that the Money Committees issue a letter of intent instructing the Department of Corrections to report to the Governor's Finance Office and the Interim Finance Committee on a semi-annual basis on the temporary reassignment of positions among its institutions. This would allow for information to be analyzed in relation to where the positions are being reassigned and to understand how the administrative regulations are being used by the agency in conjunction with or to supplement its ability to transfer general funds between its budget accounts as authorized through the back language of the Appropriations Act. The next budget is the Director's Office, budget account 3710. The subcommittee recommended a general fund appropriation of $289,000 in fiscal year 2022 to fund a department-wide staffing study as recommended by the governor to provide an objective assessment of the current security staffing at its facilities and the level and type of security staffing necessary to ensure the efficiency and safety of the department staff assigned to and the inmates housed at its facilities. The subcommittee recommended provide the report of the results of the study to fiscal staff to be provided to the Interim Finance Committee and incorporate the results of the study into the department's budgets for the fiscal year 2023 for the 2023-2025 biennium. Although the subcommittee recommended to fund a new unclassified assistant director position funded with the elimination of a vacant classified personnel officer and a vacant information technology professional classified position as recommended by the governor, it did not recommend a dedicated fleet services vehicle for the position, which results in a net reduction of general fund appropriations of $64,949 in fiscal year 2022 and $47,931 in fiscal year 2023. The next budget is Ely State Prison, which is budget account 3751. As recommended by the governor, the subcommittee recommended general fund appropriations of $297,717 in fiscal year 2022 and $306,807 in fiscal year 2023 to continue the 5% increase for a rural pay salary adjustment that was approved by the 2019 legislature for 97 custody positions, but which was not otherwise included in the 2021-23 biennium base budget. With the authority for fiscal staff to make technical adjustments as necessary. The executive budget as amended by the budget amendment A2160933751 includes funding for Ely State Prison to operate at a fully operational level with a projected population of 539 inmates for fiscal year 2022 and 562 inmates for fiscal year 2023, which is an average of less than 42% of the facility's emergency capacity level of 1,322 beds. And approximately 60% of the average inmate population of fiscal year 2020 of 918. The subcommittee recommended to fund the institution at reduced staffing and operating levels consistent with the March 2021 inmate projections for 2022 and fiscal year 2023, but not include funding for positions assigned to the 3 closed housing based on the institution's post chart with an offsetting reduction in general fund appropriations. The subcommittee directed the governor's finance office and the Department of Corrections to work with fiscal staff to determine the appropriate staffing reductions as a result of the 3 housing units being closed and to determine the corresponding amount of funding that may be considered to be appropriated to the interim finance committee contingency account in order that the department could request part or all of the funding if the housing units that are currently closed are required to be reopened to address unforeseen increase in inmate population. Per the direction of the subcommittee, the governor's finance office, the Department of Corrections, and fiscal staff have identified 52 vacant correctional officer positions assigned to the 3 closed housing units, which total general fund appropriations of $4.5 million in 2022 and $4.7 million in fiscal year 2023 in this budget. Do the subcommittee on finance and assembly committee on ways and means wish to not include funding for 52 vacant correctional officer positions assigned to 3 closed housing units, resulting in reductions in general fund appropriations of $4.5 million in fiscal year 2020 and $4.7 million in fiscal year 2023 in this budget? If so, do the committees wish to appropriate the funds as restricted funds to the interim finance committee's contingency account in order that the department could request part or all of the funding if the housing units are required to be reopened to address unforeseen increase in the inmate population?
Ms. Miller? Oh, I'm sorry. Did I stop at the wrong time? He stated that, correct? That's what- Okay, Ms. Miller, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chair. As the chair of this subcommittee, first, I just want to thank the Department of Corrections for working with us because there were, let me start by saying the committee, we did have some concerns. We did meet with fiscal staff and with the department, and because our ultimate goal is we see that there's challenges, but of course, the number one thing that we're concerned about is the safety of our staff and our inmates. And so through working and just so that everyone in the full joint committee understands that these were some robust hearings where the committee members asked very specific and direct and necessary questions. And so what some of the decisions that you see and some of the choices that the committee made that included suggestions that additional suggestions really came from the intent that we know that there's been some challenges, but we also know that we need to provide the flexibility and the continual communication and transparency so that this body understands what is happening at all times. And so that's why there's a lot more reporting coming into IFC. But again, to provide what's necessary and what was recommended based on request, based on the ability as we have new leadership in this department to move forward, and based on what we feel is needed in order to and achieve through accountability and transparency. So again, I just want everyone to know that this was very robust discussions, very difficult questions and discussions were asked. And so we feel as the subcommittee joint between Assembly and Senate that these were the best ideas and suggestions to help us move forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Welcome. Anyone else at this time? Senator Brooks? Any questions? Comments? Not seeing any? Senator Brooks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the committee not include funding for 52 vacant correctional officer positions assigned to 3 closed housing units, resulting in reductions in general fund appropriations of $4.5 million in FY 2022 and $4.7 million in FY 2023 in this budget. And I move that we appropriate the funds as restricted funds to the Interim Finance Committee contingency account in order that the department could request part or all of that funding if housing units are required to be open to address an unforeseen increase in the inmate population.
I have a motion from Senator Brooks. I'll take a second from Assemblywoman Miller. Any questions or comments on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Hearing no opposition, this component passes unanimously of the members present. Moving on, and I believe, committee, you're going to see pretty much the same thing again, so we'll just move right through it and go from there. So, Mr. Speed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next budget is the Ely Conservation Camp, which is budget account 3747. As recommended by the governor, the subcommittee recommended general fund appropriations of $9,812 in fiscal year 22 and $9,968 in fiscal year 2023 to continue the 5% increase for rural pay salary adjustment that was approved by the 2019 legislature for 3 custody positions, but which was not otherwise included in the 2021-23 biennium-based budget, with authority for staff to make technical adjustments as necessary. Committee recommended approval to fund the facility as included in the executive budget for fiscal year 2022 as amended by budget amendment 82164-13747. The subcommittee also recommended that the budget be approved to only include funding to operate the camp at a fully operational level for 3 months only of staffing and operational costs for fiscal year 2022, with the remaining 9 months appropriated as restricted funds to the Interim Finance Committee's contingency account, and that the department could request if the camp is reopened. The subcommittee recommended to appropriate funding for fiscal year 2023 as amended by budget account 82164-13747 as restricted funds to the Interim Finance Committee's contingency account that the department could request if the camp is reopened. The subcommittee also recommended excluding the budget from the back language of the Appropriations Act that allows for budgetary transfers of general fund appropriations between the Department of Corrections budgets with the approval of the Interim Finance Committee. The recommendation provides funding for the budgeted personnel, inmate-driven expenditures, and camp maintenance and operating costs, but prevents the department from using any savings in these appropriated general funds to fund non-Ely conservation camp costs at other institutions. The subcommittee's recommendation provides funding for fiscal year 2022 and places the remaining fiscal year 2022 and fiscal year 2023 funding with the Interim Finance Committee rather than with the department, in recognition that October 2021 would represent 15 months that the facility will have been closed if the agency has not reopened the facility by that time. Further, the subcommittee recommended that the existing sergeant and lieutenant positions be transferred from the Ely Conservation Camp budget to the Ely State Prison budget in the event that the camp is not reopened. The subcommittee directed the governor's finance office and the Department of Corrections to work with fiscal staff to determine the amount of funding needed to fund 3 months of staffing and operational costs so that those details could be brought to the full committees for closing consideration. Per the direction of the subcommittee, the governor's finance office, the Department of Corrections, and fiscal staff determined the appropriate amount of funding to represent 3 months of staffing and operational costs and minimal maintenance expenditures such as property and contents insurance, utilities, ongoing maintenance, contracts, inspections, and certifications to maintain the facility through the 2021-23 biennium for the full committee's consideration. The expenditures identified result in funding of $482,450 in fiscal year 22 to support 3 months of staffing operational costs as well as minimal maintenance expenditures through June 30th, 2022, and $116,716 for minimal maintenance expenditures for fiscal year 2023 with balance of $1.1 million in fiscal year 2022 and $1.5 million in fiscal year 2023 recommended to be appropriated as restricted funds to the interim finance committee's contingency account. If the Ely Conservation Camp is reopened, the department could request an allocation from the interim finance committee's contingency account for staffing, operational, and inmate-driven costs for that budget. If the camp remains closed after October 1st, 2021, the department could request an allocation from the interim finance committee contingency account for inmate-driven costs in the budgets of the facilities in which the inmates would be otherwise housed if the total population of the institution exceeds the budgeted inmate population. The subcommittee also recommended a letter of intent to have the department provide quarterly reports to the interim finance committee during the 2021-23 biennium on the status of the reopening of the Ely Conservation Camp. First, do the Senate committees Senate Committee on Finance and the Assembly Committee on Ways and Means wish to recommend general fund appropriations of $1.1 million in fiscal year 2022 and $1.5 million in fiscal year 2023 as restricted funds to the interim finance committee's contingency account that the department could request for staffing, operational, and inmate-driven costs if the camp is reopened. Note, Madam Chair, there are 3 additional items for the committee's consideration. Would the chair prefer that I stop for each item or present all 3 items without stopping?
Let's do them all together, and then we'll have individual conversation and have one motion at the very end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Second, do the Senate Committee on Finance and the Assembly Committee on Ways and Means wish to exclude this budget from the back language of the Appropriations Act that allows for the budgetary transfer of general fund appropriations between the Department of Corrections budgets with the approval of the Interim Finance Committee, except for 3 months of inmate-driven costs budgeted for fiscal year 2022? Third, do the Senate Committee on Finance and the Assembly Committee on Ways and Means wish to transfer the sergeant and lieutenant positions from the Ely Conservation Camp budget to the Ely State Prison budget in the event the camp is not reopened? Finally, do the Senate Committee on Finance and Assembly Committee on Ways and Means wish to recommend a letter of intent to have the department provide quarterly reports to the Interim Finance Committee during the 2021-23 biennium on the status of reopening the Ely Conservation Camp?
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, committee members, we have 3 decisions and the letter of intent. So the first decision point, are there any questions or comments? It seems as though the subcommittees tried to make this work the best that they could, not knowing what the future actually holds when it comes to this camp. And I know during the last interim, there was a lot of conversation about this. So are there any questions or comments on the first decision point? Senator Dennis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As we talked about this in the subcommittee, I think everybody would love to see this open, right? But so by these actions that we're taking, we want to give them the opportunity to do that if that happens, and if not, so that's kind of our thought process as we went through this. We really want it to happen, but we don't know if it's going to. But we want to make sure that the money's there to be able to do it.
Okay, thank you very much. So on the second decision point, which allows, excludes, this is one that I'm going to have a tough time with, but I understand what we're trying to do. Excludes this from the back language of the Appropriations Act that allows for the transfer of general fund appropriations between the different budgets. We realize we are in a very unusual time, and I think there's been a common theme as we've closed a lot of budgets is giving some of the departments the flexibility that they need to come out of this pandemic and to be able to get their jobs done. But my request to my colleagues that are going to be here next time is look at all that flexibility next time and try to roll some of it back if it's needed, because ultimately these are your decisions to make, and it's this committee's purview to oversee how the dollars are spent. And yes, sometimes you need flexibility, but that doesn't mean it needs to be ongoing. And especially after last interim when we had the conversation about this camp being closed, and it was a little bit of a surprise. So I would just caution us on in the future too much flexibility and to evaluate it as you go along. Any other comments on the second item? Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just a question. So I'm kind of shocked that the facility is still closed after our conversations last summer. And so the back language means that we're going to allow some of the positions that are being utilized in the Ely prison, right? But we're going to keep the account open and then give them the flexibility if they do reopen the camp that they can move those positions back on their own. Is that what that means? Just so I understand.
That's my impression. I could have Mr. Speed confirm that for you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Assemblyman. Yes, the intention would be for, if the camp can be reopened, would be for us to be able to move the position back to the camp to put it back at an operational level during that period of time.
And thank you. And it probably goes into the third one that we're going to discuss is we're actually moving two positions or proposing to move two positions to the Ely State Prison budget. All right, I'll talk about that one when we get there. But thank you.
Well,
thank you for the answer.
And that's fine. I'll open it up for other conversation on item 2. If there's any, Senator Gokachia?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just maybe a little clarification. Clearly the Ely Honor Camp is closed and probably will remain closed because we can't staff it. That staff was moved from the camp to the maximum security prison. It's probably only running at probably 60% right now as far as the staffing at the maximum security. The inmates are down under 600. So I don't know how you get the people to reopen the honor camp when we can't even provide the personnel at the maximum. So I think it'll be ongoing. We all hope that it does open, especially looking at the fire season we probably get coming forward. We typically run between 9 and 11 crews out of there, which are firefighting crews. They won't be available. So, but again, it's a staffing issue, and clearly we don't have the people out there to fill the facilities.
Thank you, Senator. Any other questions or comments on that? If not, we'll go to the third conversation point, which is the transfer of the sergeant and lieutenant positions from the conservation camp budget to the prison budget if the camp does not reopen. So, Mr. Roberts, did you have another comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so I was just curious as to why we wouldn't move all the positions. If we're going to move the supervisory positions, and I guess I'm kind of digressing to the last one too, but it's been closed a year. It doesn't appear that it's ever going to reopen. It just seems kind of odd that we would move these supervisory positions and just not move all the positions so that it's much cleaner in the budget process, as to your point. But just curious as to the backstory on why the sergeant and lieutenant positions are moved.
And I'd be happy to go to either of the subcommittee chairs if they had any comments. If not, I will go to Mr. Speed. Ms. Miller, comment? No, we're not bringing the department up. We're going to go to Mr. Speed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assemblyman Roberts, that's Speed for the record. The reason that we are only moving the sergeant lieutenant positions is that currently the positions that are working from the camp at Ely State Prisons primarily consist of the correctional officer positions, of which there are multiple vacant correctional officer positions at Ely State Prison for the incumbents to move into. So we don't have to move the positions from Ely Conservation Camp because there's open vacancies for them to go to at Ely State Prison. However, there is no vacant sergeant or lieutenant positions at Ely State Prison. And as such, if we were to not move the positions, it could potentially result in the layoff of those particular positions.
Thank you for the answer. It makes perfect sense, and I appreciate the question, ma'am.
And we know that a lot of these conversations happen in the subcommittee, and we're all going different directions. So that's why we want to make sure we get the information out there as much as possible. So with that, the final conversation point would be to recommend a letter of intent to have the department provide quarterly report to the interim finance committee during the 21-23 biennium on the status of the opening of the camp. Are there any questions or comments on this? This will be a letter of intent I will gladly sign. Seeing no other questions or comments, I believe we can go ahead and go to Senator Brooks to give us an encapsulation of the motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we approve recommendations 1, or the first, the second, and the third recommendations, and then also recommend the letter of intent.
With the quarterly reporting. Thank you very much. So with that, I have a motion from Senator Brooks, a second from Assemblywoman Miller. Any questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Hearing no opposition, passes. We need to note that Ms. Gorlow is no longer attending the meeting. She has signed out for the meeting, so please list her as absent from this point on. So with that, motion passes. That takes care. Oh, no, we still have a couple more in here. So prison medical care next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dustin Speed, LCB Fiscal Analysis Division. The next budget will be prison medical care, which is budget account 3706. As recommended by the governor, inclusive of budget amendment A2166233706. The subcommittee recommended general fund appropriations of $1.3 million in fiscal year 2022 and $2.1 million in fiscal year 2023 to fund adjustments to the per inmate medical care costs based on the department's previously utilized consumer price index methodology. The subcommittee also recommended a technical adjustment to reduce general fund appropriations by $4.1 million in each fiscal year for the 2021-23 biennium to eliminate duplicated base budget inmate-driven medical expenditures. The next budget is correctional programs, budget account 3711. The executive budget included residential substance abuse treatment grant funds, transfers from the Department of Public Safety of $239,748 in fiscal year 2022 and $524,191 in fiscal year 2023, including funding for a new substance abuse counselor position in fiscal year 2023. However, the Department of Public Safety confirmed that the residential substance abuse treatment grant funding level available for each fiscal year of the 21-23 biennium would be $239,000. The subcommittee recommended a tactical adjustment to increase general fund appropriations by $301,330 over the 2021-23 biennium, with corresponding reductions to the residential substance abuse treatment grant funds of $225,999 and transfers from the inmate welfare fund of $75,331 over the 2021-23 biennium to correct an error in funding of the personnel services category in the adjusted base budget. The subcommittee recommended not to approve the substance abuse counselor position since residential substance abuse treatment grant funds are not available to fund the position. The next budget is the inmate welfare account, budget account 3763. As recommended by the governor, the subcommittee recommended transfers from the offender store fund of $90,725 in fiscal year 22 and $110,862 in fiscal year 2023 to fund 2 new administrative assistant positions to allow the department to comply with U.S. District Court of Nevada General Order number 2012-01, which mandates all filings by inmates in the Department of Corrections custody in all cases before the federal court, excluding filings from the department camps, to be filed electronically by no later than January 1st, 2022. Then the next budget is the prison industries budget, budget account 3719. The governor recommended ending retained earnings balances inclusive of all decision units of $914,150 for fiscal year 2022 and $166,957 in fiscal year 2023. The subcommittee recommended a technical adjustment to eliminate statewide cost allocation plan charges for the 2021-23 biennium, resulting in an increase to reserves of $312,639 for fiscal year 22 and $324,031 for fiscal year 2023. The adjustment was made to assist in addressing solvency concerns for the budget for the 2021-23 biennium, and allow for the review of these charges for prison industries by the governor's finance office and the Department of Administration over the 21-23 biennium. The subcommittee recommends closing the following Department of Corrections budgets as included in the budget and consistent with the subcommittee's closing actions taken with the Department of Corrections overview closings with technical or no adjustments. High Desert State Prison, budget account 3762. Northern Nevada Correctional Center, budget account 3717. Southern Desert Correctional Center, budget account 3738. Lovelock Correctional Center, budget account 3759. Warm Springs Correctional Center, 3716. Lawrence McClure Women's Correctional Center, budget account 3761. Casa Grande Transitional Housing, budget account 3760. Northern Nevada Transitional Housing, budget account 3724. Stewart Conservation Camp, budget account 3722. Yosh Conservation Camp, budget account 3723. Three Lakes Valley Conservation Camp, budget account 3725. Wells Conservation Camp, budget account 3739. Humboldt Conservation Camp, budget account 3741. Jean Conservation Camp, budget account 3748. Carlin Conservation Camp, budget account 3752. And Tonopah Conservation Camp, budget account 3754. The subcommittee recommends closing the following Department of Corrections budgets as included in the executive budget with technical or no adjustments. Nevada State Prison, budget account 3718. Southern Nevada Correctional Center, budget account 3715. Silver Springs Conservation Camp, budget account 3749. Offender Store Fund, budget account 3708. Ranch, budget account 3727. And that concludes my report. Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speed. I have one quick question, and it's something that I've tracked over the years. So the inmate welfare account, using those dollars to actually pay for staff, has been a topic of discussion on and off over a number of years. And I cannot remember in the past if we have done it and then backfilled it later on. Have we funded positions like this before out of the inmate welfare account? I know we had this debate in, I believe, 13, possibly 15.
Yes, Dustin Speed for the record. Yes, Madam Chair, this is something that's been done before. We fund positions that are consistent with the NRS code with respect to inmate welfare funds, as long as they're for the benefit of all inmates, which would include things like the people that work at the law library, and then for this case, the staff that we're asking for to help with the e-filing program.
Okay, thank you very much. I get concerns if we use it for the actual corrections officers, because then ultimately the prisoners are paying for their own supervision. So as long as it's not actually paying for COs and it's actually a real benefit to the inmates, then I can see the nexus to the dollars. So thank you very much for clarifying that. I just wanted to make sure that we had that conversation on the record again. There have been times where it just seems to me very unwieldy to ask the prisoners to pay for their own corrections officers. It's just not that just doesn't make sense to me. So with that, committee members, are there any other questions on any of the other items that Mr. Speed has gone over? I don't see any. So with that, Senator Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we we accept the Subcommittee on Public Safety, Natural Resources, and Transportation's closing report on the Department of Corrections with the decisions that we made here this morning.
Thank you very much, Senator. I have a motion from Senator Brooks, a second from Assemblywoman Miller. Any questions or comments on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Hearing no opposition, passes unanimously of the members present. The next item on our agenda is budget closings, resolving budget differences. And I think we did really great this year. We have 2 small issues that are left. This is not going to be like some of them that I have sat through in the past where we've had to take people into the hallway and have serious conversations. So with that, I think we're in a good place right now. Staff will go ahead and pass out the document. We won't need to get out the boxing gloves this session. So committee members, what we have before us on the report of budget closing differences is the first item is the Nevada Department of Education, the Office of the Superintendent. This relates to the Commission on School Funding, the joint subcommittee that worked on this. We had a separate closing. I thank Senator Dondera Loop for all of her hard work on this subcommittee with me. It's honestly, when you stop and think about all the components of everything that we're doing with education, if this is the one closing difference we had, we are way ahead of the curve. So I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Benitez Thompson to share the concerns that the Assembly had on this and have, oops, where'd you go? Okay. Let's take just a moment. It's that time of year when I lose the majority leader. Somebody needs to put a bell on her. No one is allowed to leave the room. All right, committee, I think we can go ahead and come back together. Thank you all for your patience and staying in the room. We'll let everybody get situated again. Then we will go to Ms. Kaufman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Sarah Kaufman, Legislative Council Bureau, Fiscal Analysis Division. As you had indicated previously, we will be discussing the closing differences that are provided on a one-page document that you all should have. I believe it should be on Nellis at this time. Just a point of clarification. So if one house chooses to go with the decision of the other house, that house will have to rescind its vote and then vote for the option or the motion that was provided by the other house. If the houses decide to go a completely different route, then both houses have to rescind their votes and then vote for the new motion. So with that, Madam Chair, the first closing difference relates to the Nevada Department of Education's Office of Superintendent. The Senate Committee on Finance approved general fund appropriations of $30,000 in fiscal year 2022 and $7,500 in fiscal year 2023 that would allow two-day monthly in-person meetings from July 1st, 2021 through September 30th, 2022 for the Commission on School Funding. The Senate Committee on Finance further approved the general fund appropriations of $10,755 in fiscal year 2022 and $6,455 in fiscal year 2023 for operating expenditures and for department staff to attend 7 Commission on School Funding in-person meetings in Las Vegas in fiscal year 2022 and 2 in-person meetings in Las Vegas in fiscal year 2023. The Assembly Committee on Ways and Means approved general fund appropriations of $15,000 in fiscal year 2022 and $5,000 in fiscal year 2023, which would provide 2 monthly in-person meetings each or every other month, or 6 in-person meetings and 6 virtual meetings in fiscal year 2022, and 2 two-day in-person meetings and 1 virtual meeting through September 30th, 2022, in fiscal year 2023 for the Commission on School Funding. The Assembly Committee on Ways and Means further approved general fund appropriations of $7,745 in fiscal year 2022 and $5,595 in fiscal year 2023, which would provide funding for operating expenditures and for department staff to attend approximately 3 to 4 in-person Commission on School Funding meetings in Las Vegas in fiscal year 2022, and 1 in-person meeting in Las Vegas in fiscal year 2023 for the period beginning July 1st, 2022 through September 30th, 2022. And with that, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kaufman. I'll go to Ms. Benitez Thompson at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I appreciate that. So in the subcommittee, the conversation was just around not the cost at all, but just of the frequency. I was comparing the number of meetings and the amount of time spent in meetings, and they're 2 days every month, which essentially equals 24 days out of a calendar year, so it's almost nearly a month of time spent in this meeting over the course of a calendar year, and every other month just seemed to be good. I went back and I read all the commission's minutes and saw that oftentimes, you have really great public input from your superintendents and you've got your CFOs there, but I think requiring 2 days of them every month on this task is. I think that every other month just makes more sense, and I think then we're fairly asking all of these folks from different districts to come together. I think in a way that also helps them manage all of the other duties and responsibilities that they have for those who are tied to districts in their respective home districts.
Thank you. So Senator Dondero-Loop.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I, too, want to thank you for all the conversations and briefings that we've been through. Education always has a lot of moving parts. My feeling was that they are doing such important work right now. And I heard from some members on the committee that thought they were most productive in person, and that was my feeling there. And I think that's why the vote was different. But I truly appreciate all that they're doing, and I was just hoping that they could have some more time in person. So thank you very much.
Other folks who are wishing to be recognized? I'll go to Ms. Howdegi next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I know for me, it was really important to maintain some of the virtual meetings, which is what we discussed on the assembly side, having them, meet every other month, and then still giving them the opportunity to do the in-between meetings virtually. Because one of the things that was stated was that it was really important for the commission to have public input. And I think one of the things that we have learned over this session is that having virtual meetings really expands the opportunity for people from the public to participate. And that's why the way we closed was really important to me. Thank you.
And I'll go to Senator Dennis.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that they're able to do the work that they need to do. And I think probably either one of these could do that, but I just want, because I don't think the majority of us, unless you've actually been to their meetings, know all the work that has to go in to do this financial work of school of education funding. All of the folks that are there, I mean, that's their job, is to do that. So this is like the number one thing for them. So this isn't an extra burden that they have to do. This is actually something that they want to do because it makes a big difference. And so at the end of the day, I just want to make sure that they have the ability to meet, and that our staff has the ability, or the staff, which is mostly the Department of Ed, has the ability to be able to help them get their work done. This commission is not, it's not like an interim committee that meets and then is eventually going to go away. This is something that's going to have to go on every 2 years. They're going to have to, because there's a lot of work that always has to be done. So if, as long as they can get that work done, then I'm okay with whatever we go with. I'm sure that if they have extra work that they need to do, they can come to us and say, hey, we've got extra things that we need to do, and we could figure out a way to help them get that work done. So thank you, Madam Chair.
And thank you, Senator Dennis. Are there any other questions or comments at this time? Not seeing any. Senator Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I think I'm going to do that. I hope I'm going to do this right. I would like to make a motion, or I would like to look for a motion from the Senate to rescind our vote on this when we made the original vote on this item.
Mr. Chair, I'll make that motion.
I have a motion from Senator Dennis.
Second.
Second from Senator Ratty. All in favor of the any comments on that motion? I see none. All in favor, aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. So that motion to rescind passes the Senate unanimously.
Did somebody in the assembly try to vote?
And for the record, we're not going to count that vote. We're only going to count the Senate
They're
votes.
just so well trained. I mean, they are tuned in like a fine watch. Here we go.
I was going to say, Assemblywoman Titus, not yet. So that motion passes, and so we've rescinded that vote. Did I do that correctly?
Mr. Chairman, yes, that is correct. So now the next step would be for the Senate to take a new motion.
And I would look for a motion from the Senate to approve the funding and decisions for the commission based upon the way the Assembly Ways and Means Committee approved that in the full committee.
So moved.
I have a motion from Senator Dennis and a second from Senator Dondero Loop. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor, aye. All opposed, nay. And that motion passes unanimously in the Senate.
Good job, Senator Brooks. You got through your first budget closing differences. So happy there's only 2 today. So with that, Ms. Kaufman, if we could go to the second closing difference, which is the Governor's Office of Economic Development, Nevada Knowledge Account 101-1533. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The governor recommended general fund appropriations of $5 million, which was $2.5 million per year over the 2021-23 biennium to continue funding for the Knowledge Account grant projects. A motion was made to alternatively approve general fund appropriations of $2.5 million in fiscal year 2022 for Knowledge Account grant projects over the 2021-23 biennium. The motion was passed by the Assembly Committee on Ways and Means, but the motion failed on the Senate Committee on Finance. The Senate did not make an alternative motion.
So Ms. Kaufman, to make sure that we do this appropriate and correctly, so the Assembly had made a motion. So our discussion point here today is when we were having this conversation, the fiscal universe that we now live in didn't exist at that time. So we were doing our best to be conservative, be consistent, try to keep people on a level playing field. So we were going with what we had done in the past. Our fiscal universe has changed, and we understand the importance of these dollars. We still have a lot of questions about them, but we can keep monitoring it. A number of members of this committee were around when we created the Knowledge Fund, and we understand what its purpose is, and we just want to make sure that it sticks true to its purpose in the future. So with that, I would accept a motion to rescind the Assembly's previous action on Budget 101-1533. I have a motion from Speaker Frierson, a second from Ms. Bedinas-Thompson. Any questions or comments on the motion from the Assembly side? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Hearing no opposition, that motion has been rescinded. I believe our next item would be for the chair to accept a motion to approve the appropriations of $5 million over the 21-23 biennium to continue the funding of the Knowledge Account grant projects. Since the Senate had not taken any action on this, we'll just move to this item. So with that, Senator Brooks, I would be happy to accept a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion from Senator Brooks, a second from Speaker Frierson. Any questions or comments on the motion? I guess the only comment I would make is that there's been a lot of discussion about NSHE and what's going on with NSHE. And I know folks still have some concerns, but we're not done yet. So eventually, we're going to get there with NSHE. Speaker Frierson, did you have a comment?
I did. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just appreciated you making that comment about the fact that we're not done yet. You know, some of these days have been frustrating days, and the last couple of days in particular have been so. But I really appreciate this committee's recognition that we might not agree on how to get there sometimes, but we usually agree on where we're trying to get. And I think that what we're talking about today and yesterday in particular, I think really is a reflection that we generally do agree on where we're trying to get. And this is sometimes a messy process, but I appreciate that we have all gotten in this up to our knees to try to make the right decisions. And even when we don't agree on some of the conversations leading up to it, I respect that we frequently agree on the outcome. And I think your comments reflect that we're still trying to get there and have to depend on each other to get there.
Thank you, Speaker. Any other comments from any other committee members? This will not be the last conversation, I'm sure. There still are other things to discuss. I've never been accused of not keeping my word, so that is my word, and that's what we will continue to do, is to continue to discuss all this stuff. So with that, I have a motion and a second. We've had conversation. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Hearing no opposition, passes unanimously of all the members present. Ms. Kaufman, I believe that does it. This is the moment in time where the joint full committees of the Senate Finance and Ways and Means have pretty much finished most of our budget business. We still have tomorrow to get through, but with these closings, that allows staff to move forward and start to button everything up. So I think we're, as of this moment in time, on schedule. Thank you very much, Ms. Kaufman, Mr. Leiser, Mr. Hartz, Mr. Thorley, everyone for all of your work. And with that, I believe the only item left on our agenda for today, oh, Senator Brooks, I apologize.
Oh, no problem. I just wanted to build upon what Speaker Frierson just said. Like, we've had hundreds of budget accounts, countless hours of meetings, and between both houses and all these members and two different political parties, it boils down to these two very simple closing differences. And I just am very grateful for the members of Senate Finance and the members of Assembly Ways and Means and the communication that I have with you, Chair Carlton, that allowed this to happen. So this is just, to me, just a indication of how much we have in common as opposed to what we differ on.
Thank you very much, Senator. I appreciate that. As long as you keep doing what I tell you, we're just going to do just fine.
She says that to me too all the time, Mr. Chair.
The Speaker, you guys are all in the same
She
club.
says that to me all the time, Mr. Chair.
No, I'm sorry. I'm just teasing you. We do, it has been great being able to work together. And I think this is the first time we've had so many joint meetings, and I think it's worked really well for the staff, especially with them having to be remote, not having to get into two different meetings at the same time, being able to share everything and go forward. I believe it's worked out very well, us being able to have these cohesive conversations. So with that, I think the only thing left that we have is public comment today. So with that, broadcast services, if you could please open it up for the public comment line.
Callers wishing to make public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 309, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, and thank you, Chair Carlton and Joint Committee members. This is Brian Rippett, B-R-I-A-N, R-I-P-P-E-T. I'm a chemistry and physics teacher from Douglas County, currently serving as the president of the Nevada State Education Association. I want to take a few moments of your time to remind you that cuts to the class size reduction account have yet to be restored, and the fact that these cuts will defund over 1,000 teaching positions in the state of Nevada. And as you know, no funding equals no position. During this session, I followed discussions and committee work that's focused on attracting and retaining quality educators, as well as plans to recruit a diverse workforce that better mirrors our student population. Leaving these cuts in place threaten this progress, as well as our ability to deliver high-quality instruction to our students. I ask that you please restore the class size reduction budget, and thank you very much for your time.
Next caller, please.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 577, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Chris Daly, DALY, Nevada State Education Association. It's no secret K-12 public education has been woefully underfunded in Nevada. We've been locked in a pitch battle with Mississippi, the 48th among the states in per pupil funding. Keep in mind, Mississippi is still largely an agricultural state with an economy largely built on poultry, cotton, and soybeans. Nevada should be better than 48. With one of the most diverse student populations that includes significant numbers of English learners and at-risk students, and the largest student-to-teacher ratio in the country, there's really no way to provide a high-quality education to every Nevada student. The proposed $156 million cut to class size reduction over the next biennium would mean a loss of about 1,000 teachers across the state, meaning even more students packed into Nevada classrooms. This is not acceptable. NSE is also very concerned about the proposed $33 million cut over the biennium to early literacy supports in the Read by Grade 3 program. For the first time ever, Nevada fourth graders are performing at the same level as their national peers. This growth has been tied to strategic investment made by Nevada through the Read by Grade 3 program, along with investments in Zoom and Victory schools. On Zoom and Victory, rolling these programs into the weights in the new funding formula will water down these model programs of education equity. While it's true most English learners and at-risk students are in other schools, Zoom and Victory schools are located in Nevada's most impacted, highest poverty communities. They have the highest concentration of students in poverty and English learners. Zoom and Victory resources and services are concentrated and have a multiplier effect for students in communities who need them most, and they've been proven effective. Please grandfather these model programs. Finally, the Funding Commission has issued their preliminary recommendations to the governor and the legislature regarding optimal and adequate funding. In order to reach adequate, Nevada needs to add $2 billion per year to K-12 education. As you work on finding this new funding, I think that you should at least start by restoring the cuts that have been proposed and then work towards that $2 billion over the next 10 years. Thank you very much.
Next caller, please.
Chair, the public comment line is open and working. However, we have no callers at this time.
Thank you very much, Broadcast Services, for all of your help with getting us through today. Committee members, it's just 10 after 10. You've done excellent work, and with that, at this, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn. But just to give the committee members a heads up, beginning next week, we convert back over to meeting independently, Senate Finance and Assembly Ways and Means, to do more processing that way. I'm just going to let my committee members know that when we post in the morning, we will not be adjourning, we will be recessing. So if something happens during the day and we need to process something, we will always have it posted that we're in recess. And then if we're on the floor that evening, we'll just adjourn from the floor. Or if we have to go back to committee, we'll be adjourning that way. So I just want to give all the committee members a heads up. Don't go far. And if you go someplace, let us know where you are, because we're going to keep rolling whether you're in your seat or not. So we've got a lot of work to do over the next couple weeks. So with that, Mr. Chairman, anything else? All good? All right, we're adjourned.